Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and it's time to update your navigation databases again today. Now in this video I want to give you a little guidance as to how to do that on the Airbus A220, as it may not seem immediately obvious. If you're using the Navigraph database, then you need to do the following steps in order to be able to update your AIRAC. Unfortunately it is not possible, well, or fortunately I should say, because in the real world updating is quite an interesting thing, but in any way it is not possible to update the A220's nav database out of the Navigraph app, but instead you need to do it from right within the aircraft. In today's video I want to show you how to do that. So let's go ahead and get started. Looking down at the FMS, you can see that I am using the Navigraph database, and this one here has expired, which the airplane is actually showing us by making it amber, telling us that the date in here is outside of the date of what we've got in the simulator. By the way, yes, that means that if you change the simulator time to a time within that time frame, from the 9th of July to the 5th of August, that thing would actually turn white again, since it would be in date again inside your simulator. Now, let's go ahead and have a look into how to do this. Now, obviously, you can see the native simulator database is already updated over here. That's because I did already use my Navigraph hub to update the default simulator data. But how can we update the data right from the Navigraph package within the airplane? Now, that's actually quite easy to do. So let's go ahead. You're on the database page of the flight management system. You go down and then you press the menu key down here. And this opens up the different menus for all the different pages that are available. We want to go onto data today, and then we want to go onto data load. Now this is exactly what they would do in the real airplane as well. Now don't be confused, you got two different menus here. You got load new databases, and then you also have maintenance data load menu, and you got reload data and software for current stuff. So over here, if you went down here, that is the wrong way, but down here you could reload the current nav database. You don't want to do that, you want to go onto load new databases like this. And over here we can see a new Navigraph database is available. So let's select that, let's hit start load, and this is going to uplink the current nav database into the airplane. That's going to be valid from the 5th of August onwards. Now the load is complete, and with that done, we can return to the FMS, and you can see that we've now got a Navigraph database from the 6th of August to the 2nd of September. Now, this is pretty much the process that you would use in a real-world airplane as well. And just a little story over here, for those of you who just wanted to know how to update, you can finish the video now. But for those of you who are interested in a little real-world insight as well over here, let's quickly talk about updating navigation databases on modern aircraft, because that's actually quite the interesting story there. Now, navigation databases do have a tendency to go out of date every 28 days, and therefore they do need updating. Now, in flight simulation, that is all easily done, because you can simply use the Navigraph tool, update it, or if you are just running the default simulator database, it's actually done automatically. In the real world, that's of course a little bit different. Now, back in the days when I used to fly short haul on the Boeing 737, it was actually quite the process. We usually just had 25-minute turnarounds back in the day, and when AIRAC day approached, usually a couple days ahead, we would eventually fly the airplane into a maintenance base. Now, they wouldn't tell you beforehand. You taxi into the gate, you see an engineer with a laptop and some very fancy looking cables waiting down there, and that's how you know you are going to be delayed today. Now, why is that? The 737, as well as the Airbus A320, by the way, just like the A330 and other aircraft, the 737 was an aircraft where you could only do a manual upload, and that would take time. Remember, the plane's been developed in the 1990s, and that's exactly the kind of technology you've got in the aircraft. So the engineer would come on board, they would have the new database on their laptop, they would cable it up with the airplane, and then the AIRAC update would start. The 737's computers were so slow, the entire update usually took like 15 up to 20 minutes. And in that time, you can, of course, not do anything in the airplane. Now, initially, it would take some 15 minutes to uplink the new database from the laptop into one of the two FMCs. However, you've got two FMCs. So after those 15 minutes, when the database was loaded into the first FMC, you would then go into the maintenance menus, and now engineering would normally do that, and then they would cross-load the database from the newly updated FMC into the other, which would again take some 5 minutes or so. So if you've got a planned 25-minute turnaround, and if they need to update your AIRAC, then 20 minutes are going to be used just for updating the AIRAC, and only thereafter you can actually start programming the FMS to get all of that stuff ready. So, guaranteed delay when that happens. Now you might say, okay, so just update it during the night when the airplane is standing, and yeah, you're absolutely right about that, provided that you're at a base where maintenance is actually able to do that. So many bases wouldn't have engineering at all, many bases would just have engineering that could do, for example, hardware work but no software work, so they wouldn't have a software certified engineer, and so on. So it's actually quite fancy to update the AIRAC. Now that was on short haul. Now let's move over to long haul, because in long haul, AIRAC day gets even fancier. Now, uplinking the stuff into the airplane, same thing. Again, takes a little bit of time, but the good news is that long-haul aircraft have turnaround times that are so long that engineering can just update the database without the pilots even noticing, because they're probably not even going to be on board yet. So that's no problem. However, what is a problem is what happens when you are flying over the date line so that your AIRAC goes out of date while you're flying. What are you going to do then? Are you going to depart with the future AIRAC so that you're out of date on the departure? Or are you going to land with the older AIRAC so that you're out of date on landing? Now, obviously you're not just going to switch it in flight because, well, that would delete anything you got in your FMS. You do not want that. So switching the AIRAC in flight is not an option. Now, ICAO has actually specified a procedure for that, and that procedure is quite clear. You are going to depart with the AIRAC that's current at the time of the departure. Now let's make it fancy. What happens if you're scheduled to depart at 23:59, you have 2 minutes of delay and you're departing at 0001? Well, keep the old database there, that's what ICAO says. However, what happens then if you are flying into an airport where the procedures have changed? This happened quite significantly some 10 years back with Austrian Airlines and Vienna. Vienna introduced completely new arrivals, and they completely scrapped the old ones, introduced the new ones. Now you had all the long-haul flights inbound, and to be fair, it wasn't just Austrian, but of course mainly as the hub carrier, but also other airlines flying into Vienna. And ATC, in the morning, would of course clear everyone onto the new arrivals. If the pilots read their briefing, they would knew about that, because stuff like that would absolutely be mentioned in the pre-flight briefings that the pilots would be provided by the airline. Yep, that's the kind of job that dispatch does. Now, obviously what happened is pilots got cleared for those procedures, and, well, what happened? They could, of course, not select them. If they read their briefings, they would know about that and confidently tell air traffic control, unable, we're still on the old AIRAC, and then air traffic control would provide radar vectors. That is the procedure as it is intended by ICAO. Of course, in the real world, not everybody read their briefings, so people would be like, oh, I cannot find that in my nav database, and the real world would feel like VATSIM for, you know, a morning of long-haul arrivals. Now, obviously controllers knew about that as well, but they did their job, they cleared everyone for the new procedures. Now, some pilots would probably even have had the according charts on board already, and then just programmed the waypoints manually. Not exactly what you're supposed to do, but possible. But as mentioned, the official ICAO procedure is that you're only going to update the database after you landed on the new day, so that there is no disruption of the FMS or anything in flight. Well, so short haul, quite the hustle. Long haul, especially when you're flying outbound from the home base, check that the new database has already been preloaded by the engineers, so that the inbound crew who might depart on the next day actually has a valid nav database available. Very important. And if you're flying through the date line, then keep the old AIRAC that was valid at the time of the departure. You are allowed to do that, that's what you're supposed to do, but always remember to switch it, especially when it's around AIRAC day and you're checking the nav database. Always make sure that the database has been switched. Well guys, and that's a little story from the real world over here. I know that made this video a lot longer than it was originally intended. However, I hope you enjoyed these insights. Thank you very much for watching. As always, be sure to like, comment and subscribe. And if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you very much for watching, and then I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one.